Cool. Hey, what's up? Zonzo Mindhaus. Yeah, just wanted to go through a story from today that I found to be a little less of the norm, and something that we could look at that maybe isn't getting covered in the mainstream news that seems interesting. It's about Africa becoming a leader of global growth. So Africa's tech startup scene is experiencing remarkable growth, and there are mostly economists. Definitely hasn't entered the pop culture psyche yet. Who are predicting remarkable growth in Africa. So it's can be traced back to Kenya, where there's been a creation of a startup community and innovative products that attract startup funding. These African startups still face challenges, so I'm not painting that this is some sort of rosy picture. But the startup scene is booming, and Africa's tech startup scene um, has attracted U.S. investors. They've recognized the potential of developing Africa, not just from the standpoint of uh, mineral reserves, but actual infrastructure and global um, I guess, skilled labor development. So, just to summarize this article, though, from Arab News, which is from today or a day or two ago, but the uh, basically the article is just saying that the next wave of global growth will come from this continent. That it will become the next continent, I suppose you would be pointing your eyeballs towards for innovation. We talk about China, as a having a hub for the startup tech scene, and then there are these pockets like of different countries like Amsterdam and whatever. Just that we point our eyeballs towards as uh, having an unusual amount of unicorns and growth, especially when it comes to skilled labor. So Africa certainly deserves it. There's been obviously a long history of exploiting it. Do I need to go further there? But so, anyways, so yeah, so I found this cool video. We're gonna take a look at it. So it is called "Why Investors Are Pulling into African Startups." So let's take a look, and I'll watch along with you.
Kenya was known as the Silicon Savannah, name coming from the Silicon Valley. A lot of early adapters in the tech space started creating a community and building products that has now led to the creation of the African tech space.
This is exactly why I wanted to play this video, and I actually haven't watched it. So this is great. But it all started, with a group of early adopters who came together, saw this opportunity, saw this that they had. That's where innovation comes from. You look around at your community, you see where we can create new opportunities. There's a lack of tech startups, and that's how this evolved, I guess. But yeah, it's amazing to see this community of early adopters paving the way in the African tech space. They saw the potential and they took action, and it's like saying it takes a village. That's they're exploring uncharted territory. They're building something from scratch, and not everyone, of course, had an equal chance to participate in this growth. Of course, income disparities, lack of education, limited funding for smaller markets, and women-led businesses have created barriers, of course, in Africa that will still need to be addressed as this continues to grow. But it's always important for the tech industry to be inclusive and provide opportunities for everyone. So, yeah, that's cool that they're unlocking the potential of Africa's tech scene. Cool. Let's keep going.
After over a decade of development, Africa's startup scene is booming. Last year, the tech sector attracted a record $5 billion, more than the total amount raised in the previous 3 years combined.
It's so crazy. You have to think of how small of a drop in the bucket, people are getting $1 billion in seed capital for the guy from WeWork got $300 million before even coming up with the idea, that cook.
Actually kind of mind-blowing in many ways. The pace of growth in the last couple of years is incredible in terms of the amount of funding coming into the continent.
And that is particularly because there was a lot of interest and excitement from US investors. We saw some really scaling up their investments.
The continent also saw the creation of a record number of 5 unicorns, private companies valued over $1 billion. And this year looks even more promising.
This creation of unicorns has more or less proved to investors that you can make African tech companies into multi-billion-dollar companies that are profitable on the continent.
It's a vibrant place to be. We've got great innovators, and we're beginning to see that evolve quickly.
But Africa's start.
That's so sick. I love to see how they're so optimistic and yeah, it's awesome.
Startup scene is still much smaller compared to the rest of the world. With regulation differences and income disparities across the continent, can African startups keep growing?
Sick of hiring setters that barely.
Yeah. So while their ad plays, though, yeah, I mean, look, like, what is there to say? I think that African startups will face a lot of challenges. They have limited funding compared to the global market. It's harder for African startups to get money if they're not a developed nation or continent, comparatively to just Silicon Valley. There is one cool fact, though, that I read that Africa has the youngest population in the world. So just on an economic statistics level, that provides a optimistic outlook for innovation, as the youth are, typically the drivers of growth in this kind of way. Anyways, let's keep going.
When you talk of the genesis of tech in Africa, you'd have to go back when government started promoting the internet and the use of the internet. We started seeing a pipeline of software engineers that came out. And some of the things that they started doing was really making applications, for instance, HR management applications for universities, for hospitals, for large stores and factories.
Also, in the 1990s, big tech companies brought cell phones to the continent, laying foundations for Africa's mobile internet age. Kenya has been one of the hubs leading Africa's tech innovation since the 2000s.
You can argue that Nairobi is where Africa's tech started. So in the late 2000s, with the advent of the sea cables coming onto the coast of Kenya and with the availability of well-educated young people, a community was created in Nairobi. And iHub was one of the first community spaces on the continent that brought innovation groups together.
I think this iHub concept is awesome. I've read up a little bit about it. So iHub is this, it's just like a startup incubator, but they've created more than like 2,500 jobs. So, they've made a huge impact, but they're nurturing growth. They're doing amazing work. Yeah. Anyways, let's keep watching.
Founded back in 2010 by a group of like-minded techies, iHub provided a much-needed space for entrepreneurs in Nairobi to meet, share ideas, and develop products.
First
3 years of IHub was amazing. There was this energy that was on another level of people to actually chat with each other, people to build prototypes, people having hackathons, like hackathon after week, just to kind of like see who could develop the best app, trainings happening, people giving their time to actually like train the young developers. So it was really intense of how amazing the community was from all levels, academia, from corporate, from government, to tech community itself. We've had like hundreds of startups that came out of iHub. Some have actually been very successful.
Since its inception, iHub has helped create 150 startups and created more than 2,500 jobs.
Just imagine if that was all over Africa, if that the success of this was viewed as a way to implement policies across other countries in Africa. Each country has their own individual issues. Africa as a whole is much more undeveloped as an economy compared to the rest of the world, not just the European world, but every part of the world.
Achieving what the Kenyan government tried to but couldn't do.
You see world-class office space. We see launchpads to extraordinary startups and profitable organizations.
In 2008, 2 years before iHub was born, the state proposed a plan to build a tech hub called Konza Technopolis, about 60 kilometers southeast of Nairobi. But over a decade later, the project is still a work in progress.
You cannot force innovation to happen. It's not just the space that you need, it's the people that come with it. It's a talent that needs to build this tech space.
Another milestone in Kenya's tech history was the birth of M-Pesa, a mobile phone-based money transfer service.
Like X, no, more like WeChat, but yeah.
It was launched in 2007 by Safaricom, Kenya's biggest telecom company, partly owned by the UK firm Vodafone. Like many African countries, Kenya's banking system was underdeveloped, and a huge majority of the population didn't have a bank account. That meant transferring money was difficult.
You start with a send money home proposition because Kenya has.
It's so cool how enabling more convenient money transferring, it opens up people's eyes to digital innovation. Like just like I'm thinking more like the way that iPad payment systems on in like mom and pop restaurants, in the cheapness and scalability of that has kind of opened up like people who are against innovation, like once they realize, oh, I can take an iPad and use that super easy to set up, super easy to put at my checkout station, that then there's a portal that opens to like, oh, hey, there's ways to reach people through social media, scale it up, etc. Anyways, that's that's a pandering thought to there's a cynical way to approach that, but yeah.
As a rural to urban migration, and everyone in the urban areas was sending money to rural areas, and that meant taking time off work or over the weekend to go see your parents and give them money. I remember in 2007, I used to travel almost 500 kilometers from Nairobi to go give my mom money. Just with the advent of the send money home proposition, that changed how we send money in Kenya dramatically.
But smartphones hadn't arrived yet in Kenya, and so the M-Pesa team relied on USSD and SIM Toolkit, the same technology used for sending an SMS. Users registered for an M-Pesa account with their SIM cards, put cash into the account through an M-Pesa agent, and then sent the money by phone. Recipients could also cash out through an agent. The transaction fee for sending money was 30 Kenyan shillings, about 26 cents.
Simplify your business accounting with.
Yeah, so really cool. I mean, yeah, it's definitely like something like a rudimentary version of Venmo. Anyways, but yeah, this they're talking about something that sparked the innovation. This was a long time ago.
Into a complex payment system where people can not only just transfer money but can also pay bills, borrow, and there are now even investment products that are on M-Pesa. In fact, even the Kenyan government used the system to sell bonds at one time.
We have 30 million active customers on the M-Pesa Kenya ecosystem.
Into the continent's
Anyways, I think we kind of get it. I mean, it's really fascinating, and I love that article, about the wave of global growth that will be predicted to that I think that video is from a year ago, but that there's going to be a wave of global growth in this type of way where it's not just about exploiting natural resources. It's not just about mining cobalt. This is fascinating, and I think that's where we can harness the growth that is much needed in Africa. That by investing in African tech incubators, there's a lot of potential to be unlocked. And yeah, cool. I hope you guys like this video, and please subscribe and leave a comment if you have any thoughts and want to argue with me.